In my 43 years sitting on this bench, I have witnessed just about everything a courtroom can offer. I have watched grown men weep, watched others bargain, watched some rage, and a rare few actually speak the truth. But never, not once in 4 decades, did I imagine someone wearing a badge would march into my courtroom and attempt to place me in handcuffs. That morning arrived on a bitter Tuesday in February, and what unfolded afterward became one of the most talked about events in the history of Providence's courthouse. If you are someone who believes that the law applies to everyone equally, including those who are supposed to uphold it, then you will want to hear every word of this story, because what I am about to share will remind you that justice still has a pulse. And if you enjoy watching arrogance get dismantled in real time, go ahead and hit that subscribe button right now, because you have found exactly the right place. It began as any ordinary morning would. I entered my courtroom at precisely 8:45 a.m., coffee in one hand and the leather folder my father gave me the day I was sworn in as a judge in the other. The room was filled beyond capacity, people standing along every wall. That alone should have signaled that something out of the ordinary was coming. My clerk, Sandra, caught my eye as I settled into my seat. She leaned in close and told me quietly that we had a special matter this morning. Case number 77349. I scanned my docket and landed on a name, James Richardson, 52 years old, facing charges of contempt of court and obstruction of justice. On the surface, contempt cases are rarely complicated. Someone disrespects a judge, refuses to honor a court order, that sort of thing. But when I raised my eyes from the page and looked out at my courtroom, I had to look twice. James Richardson was not an ordinary defendant. He was the police commissioner of Providence, the highest-ranking law enforcement official in the entire city. He stood before me dressed in a tailored Navy suit that likely ran close to $3,000. His tie was perfectly knotted, a fine geometric pattern visible even from the elevated bench. His shoes were Italian leather, buffed to a shine that threw back the fluorescent courtroom lights. On his wrist sat a Rolex Presidential that glinted with every small movement he made. This was a man who carried his wealth and authority like armor, making certain no one in the room could miss it. Beside him stood his attorney, Marcus Webb, the kind of high-priced defense lawyer who makes his living shielding the wealthy and politically connected. Marcus arrived in a charcoal suit with a briefcase that probably cost more than a working family's monthly income. Both men wore expressions that communicated the same silent message. They believed themselves to be operating in a different category than everyone else present. On the opposite side of the room stood Assistant District Attorney Lisa Chen, 34 years old, 6 years with the DA's office and one of the most capable prosecutors I had seen in a long time. But today she appeared unsettled. Her hands moved restlessly across her papers, and I could see the faint sheen of perspiration on her forehead despite the cool air in the room. That told me this case ran much deeper than its docket entry suggested. I called the room to order, greeted everyone, and asked Lisa to explain to me why I was looking at the city's top cop standing in my courtroom as a defendant. She pulled in a long breath. Her voice wavered at first, but steadied as she spoke. She told me that 3 weeks prior, on January 14th at roughly 2:30 in the afternoon, Commissioner Richardson had deliberately inserted himself into an active criminal investigation. She said he had exploited his authority to intimidate witnesses and threaten the very officers conducting the case, a case that involved his own nephew. I straightened in my chair and asked her to keep going. Lisa explained that Richardson's nephew, a 23-year-old by the name of Brandon Richardson, had been taken into custody on charges of assault and battery. The victim was a military veteran named Michael Torres, 41 years old, who had served 2 combat tours in Afghanistan. He returned home carrying both PTSD and a permanent leg injury that left him with a noticeable limp. He had taken a job as a hospital security guard, working hard to provide for his wife and 3 children, the youngest of whom, a 7-year-old daughter, was actively receiving leukemia treatment at the very hospital where he worked. According to the police report, Brandon Richardson had crossed paths with Michael outside a bar on Westminster Street. Michael was on his way home after a late shift. It was 11:20 at night. Brandon was heavily intoxicated and had been documenting his evening all over Instagram, posting videos of himself and a group of friends doing shots of premium tequila from bottles priced around $300 each. In one clip, he fanned out a thick roll of cash and laughed on camera about how his uncle would always make his problems go away, no matter what. The confrontation began when Michael accidentally brushed against Brandon on the sidewalk. Michael apologized on the spot. He was that kind of man, measured, polite, the sort who offered respect without needing a reason to. But Brandon had no interest in an apology. 3 eyewitnesses confirmed that he began hurling insults. He taunted Michael for his limp. He called him degrading names and shoved him hard enough to send him to the ground. Michael attempted to walk away. He had no desire for a confrontation, but Brandon pursued him. He kept pushing, kept provoking. Eventually, Michael stopped walking, turned around, and calmly told him to back off. That was the moment Brandon threw the first punch, not just once, 7 times. Witnesses described Brandon swinging until Michael was unconscious on the pavement, blood on the sidewalk. Michael was transported to the hospital with a fractured jaw, 3 broken ribs, a concussion, and additional permanent damage to the leg injury he had already been carrying home from war. Police arrested Brandon that same night. The evidence against him was overwhelming. 3 witnesses on record, security footage from the bar, and Brandon's own social media showing him drunk and menacing in the hours before the attack. It should have been an uncomplicated prosecution. But then the commissioner arrived. He showed up at the police station at 1:15 in the morning and demanded the officers release his nephew on the spot. When they declined, he threatened them. He told them their careers were finished. He said he would make certain they never worked in law enforcement again. Officer Patricia Morales, badge number 3472, was the officer on duty that night. She was a single mother raising 2 children on her own. She had given 9 years to the Providence Police Department with a spotless record, not a single formal complaint, and she was on the verge of a promotion. But when she refused to release Brandon Richardson, the commissioner pulled her into a private room. He told her that if she did not drop the charges, he would see to it that her career ended. He threatened to plant evidence in her locker. He told her he would tear her reputation apart. Patricia recorded every second of it on her phone. She knew exactly what she was doing. Without that recording, it would come down to her word against the commissioners, and she was realistic about how that equation tended to work out. So she kept the phone going and let him threaten her for 8 uninterrupted minutes. Then she walked that recording directly to the district attorney's office. And that is how we arrived here. The police commissioner of Providence was standing in my courtroom charged with witness intimidation, obstruction of justice, and abuse of authority. And he did not appear remotely concerned. He looked irritated, as though showing up was an inconvenience he had already decided to brush aside. His attorney rose and addressed the court. He characterized the entire matter as a misunderstanding. He said Commissioner Richardson had only been trying to ensure his nephew received equitable treatment. He argued that Officer Morales had misread the commissioner's intentions. Then he said something that genuinely made my temperature rise. He claimed the district attorney's office was running a coordinated political attack against his client. I let him finish every word. Then I asked for the recording to be played. Lisa Chen connected her device to the courtroom's audio system. Commissioner Richardson's voice filled the room clearly and without distortion. There was nothing ambiguous about it. He had threatened Officer Morales in precise, explicit terms. He described exactly what steps he would take to dismantle her life if she did not do what he said. When the audio ended, not a single person in that room made a sound. I looked at Commissioner Richardson and asked him whether he wished to respond. He smiled. Actually smiled. Then he said he stood fully behind every word captured on that recording. He said Officer Morales was a subordinate employee who should have carried out his instructions without question. He said that as commissioner, he held the authority to determine which arrests moved forward and which did not. Before we go further, I want to ask you something directly. If you believe that no one gets a free pass from accountability simply because they hold a title, drop that in the comments right now and tell me what you would have done from my seat. And if you are still not subscribed, this is the moment. This channel is built around one idea, that justice is real and we are just getting going. I settled back and let Commissioner Richardson's statement settle over the room. I wanted everyone present to absorb the full weight of what he had just admitted to. He had acknowledged threatening a sworn officer of the law. He had acknowledged attempting to obstruct a criminal prosecution, and he delivered that admission with a grin. But I was not close to finished. I asked Lisa Chen whether she had additional evidence to present. She did. She lifted a thick stack of documents from the table. She told the court that in the wake of Officer Morales coming forward, 3 additional officers had independently contacted the district attorney's office. Each of them described a consistent pattern of behavior. Commissioner Richardson leveraging his position to shield politically connected individuals and personal associates from prosecution. One officer testified he had been ordered to alter the contents of an official police report. A second officer said she had been instructed to destroy physical evidence in a case involving a city councilman's son. A third described a shadow arrangement operating inside the department, a private tier of protection extended exclusively to certain individuals with the right connections. The stack of papers held sworn affidavits from each of the three officers, along with a collection of internal department emails documenting Commissioner Richardson's conduct across a span of years, a minimum of 15 separate incidents in which he had either derailed investigations or used his authority to punish officers who would not comply. I looked back at Commissioner Richardson. The smile had left his face. What replaced it was not remorse. It was rage. His color had shifted to a deep red. His jaw was locked tight. Then he made a decision that altered the entire atmosphere of the room. He pushed himself to his feet and leveled a finger directly at me. He told me that with all due respect, I was operating well beyond my ability. He called me a small-time traffic judge who had gotten fortunate with some internet attention. He said I lacked both the authority and the capacity to sit in judgment of him. He said he had devoted his entire career to protecting this city, and that using his influence to protect his own family was simply what power was meant for. The courtroom broke apart. Voices erupted from every direction. My bailiff called out for order. I struck my gavel 3 times and silence gradually returned. I looked at Commissioner Richardson and asked him whether he was done. He said he was not. He told me I was a performance, not a judge. He said I had no real weight behind my position. He told me I was nothing more than a television figure wearing a costume. And then he said the one thing I will carry with me for the rest of my life on this bench. He said he knew the difference between him and me. He came from real money, real influence. He said I was the child of an Italian immigrant who spent his life on a factory floor. He called me blue collar. He told me that regardless of the robe I wore, underneath it I was still just a working class kid from Federal Hill pretending to belong in rooms meant for people like him. That was it. That was the moment everything crystallized. I have absorbed insults in that courtroom before, but this one was not aimed only at me. It was aimed at my father. My father, who arrived in this country with almost nothing and worked 16-hour shifts so his family could have a life worth living. My father, who instilled in me the belief that every human being carries inherent dignity, regardless of what they earn or where they come from. I rose from my chair. I looked Commissioner Richardson in the eye without flinching. I told him to sit down and remain silent. His attorney grabbed his arm and brought him back into his seat. Then I turned to Lisa Chen and asked what else she had. She picked up her phone and mirrored it to the courtroom monitor. The screen displayed a screenshot pulled from the commissioner's personal Instagram account. The photo was from 2 weeks prior. Commissioner Richardson was seated in what appeared to be a private members' club, a glass of whiskey in hand, flanked by 2 city councilmen and a state senator. The caption beneath it read, "Another productive week looking after our interests. Most people don't grasp how things actually operate. I want you to take a moment and recognize exactly where this is headed. But before I tell you what came next, do something for me. If you believe that justice belongs to everyone and not only to those who can afford to buy it, hit that like button right now." Lisa moved to the next screenshot. This one came from a private message thread between Commissioner Richardson and his nephew Brandon, sent the morning after Brandon's arrest. Brandon had written that he had made a serious mistake and that he had genuinely hurt someone. The commissioner's reply was brief and cold. He told Brandon not to give it another thought. He said he would take care of everything. He referred to the injured veteran, a man who served his country and was putting himself through hell to keep his sick daughter alive, as a crippled nobody who did not matter. The courtroom went still. Lisa was not finished. She displayed another exchange. Brandon wrote that the officers were continuing to press the investigation and that the female officer on the case would not let up. The commissioner replied that he would deal with her personally, that he would destroy everything she had built if necessary, and that she was just another nobody. Then Lisa presented something that genuinely ignited something in me. It was a TikTok video posted publicly by Brandon Richardson just 3 days earlier. He was at a party surrounded by expensive bottles and loud music, laughing and moving to the beat. The text overlaid on the video read, "When you put someone in the hospital and your uncle erases the whole thing. Money and power, baby. Rules are for people without either." The video had accumulated 43,000 views, and sitting in the comment section posted from Commissioner Richardson's verified account was this: That is my nephew. Family always comes first. We do not operate under the same rules as everyone else. I looked at Commissioner Richardson. His face had drained of all color. He stood anyway and announced that his accounts had been hacked and that someone was orchestrating a setup against him. I asked him to sit. Then I asked Lisa whether the district attorney's office had confirmed the authenticity of the evidence. She confirmed they had. Digital forensic specialists had traced every message and post back to devices registered directly to Commissioner Richardson. Then Lisa presented the final layer. In the course of their investigation, prosecutors had uncovered something that extended far beyond this single case. Commissioner Richardson had been operating what amounted to a protection arrangement, accepting payments from affluent individuals in exchange for keeping them out of the criminal justice system. Bank records had been obtained showing deposits exceeding $2 million across 5 years, routed into offshore accounts that the commissioner controlled. The FBI had already opened a federal investigation into Richardson covering corruption, money laundering, and racketeering. Federal agents had been preparing to move on him within the coming week, but the commissioner had become aware that the investigation was closing in. His appearance in my courtroom today was a preemptive move, an attempt to undermine the local legal process before federal authorities could act. But the window had already closed. As Lisa laid out these final details, the rear doors of the courtroom opened. 3 people entered, 2 federal agents and a woman in a fitted business suit who introduced herself as Assistant United States Attorney Jennifer Morrison. She informed the court that Commissioner Richardson was the subject of an active federal investigation covering multiple serious crimes. Then the doors opened a second time. A man in a full police uniform stepped into the room. It was Chief Deputy Commissioner Anthony Rizzo, the second highest-ranking officer in the Providence Police Department. Every person present assumed he had come to defend his boss. Instead, he walked directly to the prosecution table and asked permission to address the court. Chief Rizzo told me he had spent 29 years in the Providence Police Department. He said he could no longer stay quiet. He said that Commissioner Richardson had hollowed out the department's integrity. He said that dedicated officers were paralyzed with fear, afraid to do their jobs properly because they knew the commissioner would come for them if they ever arrested someone he wanted protected. Then Chief Rizzo said that the commissioner had attempted to bring him into the scheme, offering money and advancement in exchange for his cooperation in concealing crimes. Chief Rizzo refused. After that refusal, the commissioner began working to push him out of the department entirely. But Chief Rizzo had been building a record the entire time. Copies of internal emails, recorded phone calls, a detailed personal journal documenting each incident as it occurred. He handed a thick folder to Lisa Chen. Then he turned to face Commissioner Richardson directly and said, "Jim, I genuinely respected you once, but you have never cared about anything beyond yourself. You have betrayed every officer who laces up their boots and pins on that badge every morning. You are a disgrace." Commissioner Richardson finally came apart. He got to his feet and started shouting that he was being conspired against, that this was nothing more than a coordinated attack on him. Then he made the mistake that sealed everything. He turned to me and announced that he was having me arrested. He said I was biased and operating in bad faith. He pulled out his phone and called the police department, ordering officers to come to the courthouse and take me into custody. I did not move from my bench. I let him make the call. When he ended it, I asked him whether he was satisfied. He told me that within minutes, officers would arrive and remove me from the courtroom. We sat. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes. The doors did not open. He called again. The voice on the other end delivered news that stripped every remaining trace of color from his face. The entire department had declined to execute his order. They no longer recognized his authority. Chief Rizzo had already been in contact with the mayor and the city council, who had convened an emergency session and voted immediately to suspend Commissioner Richardson from his position. His badge was gone. His authority was gone. Everything he had used as a shield stripped away in a single vote. At that precise moment, 2 Providence police officers did enter the courtroom. They had not come for me. They had come for him. One of those officers was Patricia Morales. She stepped forward and looked him directly in the eye. She said, "James Richardson, you are under arrest for witness intimidation, obstruction of justice, corruption, and abuse of authority." I will carry the expression on his face in that moment for the rest of my life. Every trace of arrogance had evaporated. What remained was something far simpler: fear. He looked around the room, searching for anyone who might intervene on his behalf. Not one person moved. We are close to the end now. If you have made it this far, you are exactly the kind of person this channel exists for. Before I tell you the sentence I handed down, hit subscribe if you want more stories like this one, more moments where the system actually delivers what it was designed to deliver. Officer Morales placed the handcuffs on Commissioner Richardson. As she did, I spoke directly to him. I told him that in 4 decades on this bench, I had never encountered anyone who carried themselves with the kind of brazen contempt for accountability that he had shown. I told him he had violated the public's trust in the most fundamental way possible. He had corroded an entire law enforcement department from the inside out. He had terrorized good officers. He had shielded criminals and done it all without a single visible moment of regret. I found him guilty of criminal contempt of court. I found him guilty of witness intimidation. I found him guilty of obstruction of justice. I sentenced him to 1 full year in jail, no bail, to begin immediately. But that was not the complete picture. I ordered him to pay full restitution to Officer Patricia Morales. I ordered him to cover every medical expense incurred by Michael Torres as a result of the assault. And I ordered him to deliver a formal public apology to every officer serving in the Providence Police Department. Then I imposed something I had never included in a sentence before. Upon his release, he would be required to complete 1,000 hours of community service. That service would take place at the VA hospital where Michael Torres worked. He would work side by side with veterans every single day. He would have no choice but to face, repeatedly and in person, the kind of people his nephew had brutalized and the kind of people he had treated as disposable. As Officer Morales guided him toward the exit, Commissioner Richardson turned and looked back at me one final time. Something in his eyes had changed. I could see, perhaps for the first time, that the reality of what had happened had actually reached him. He was not exceptional. He was not untouchable. All the money, all the influence, all the carefully cultivated power, none of it had mattered when the moment came. After he was gone, I addressed the courtroom. I told everyone present that what they had witnessed that morning was proof of something important. Our justice system is capable of functioning the way it was intended, but only when officers like Patricia Morales refuse to be broken by intimidation, only when prosecutors like Lisa Chen hold the line even when the pressure is immense, only when leaders like Anthony Rizzo choose the harder right over the easier wrong. I asked Officer Morales to return to the bench. I thanked her for the courage it had taken to walk that recording into the DA's office. I told her that she embodied what law enforcement is supposed to stand for. She had tears in her eyes and told me quietly that she was just doing her job. But it was more than that. She had put her entire career on the line because it was the right thing to do, and she had done it without hesitation. I also called Michael Torres forward. He had been seated quietly in the back of the room throughout the entire proceeding. He walked toward the bench slowly, his limp marking every step. I told him I was deeply sorry for what had been done to him. I informed him that the city would be taking responsibility for all of his medical costs. I also told him that I would personally work to make certain his daughter had access to the best possible care available for her treatment. Michael broke down. He told me that he had honestly not expected justice to reach him. When he found out who had attacked him, he assumed the whole thing would quietly disappear and he would be left to deal with the consequences alone. He had not been forgotten. The case made national news by that evening. Every major outlet was covering it. The footage of Commissioner Richardson being arrested inside my courtroom spread across the internet and reached millions of viewers within hours. 2 weeks after the sentencing, the FBI formally arrested Commissioner Richardson on federal charges: racketeering, money laundering, and corruption. He was looking at a potential 20 years in a federal facility. His nephew, Brandon, stripped of the protection that had kept him insulated from real consequences, entered a guilty plea and received a 3-year sentence. Officer Patricia Morales was promoted to sergeant and later advanced to lieutenant. Chief Anthony Rizzo was appointed the new police commissioner of Providence and has devoted himself to the work of rebuilding the relationship between the department and the people it serves. Michael Torres made a full recovery from his injuries. His daughter's leukemia went into remission. He still reports to the hospital every shift.